video is sponsored by Frontline Model Hobbies, your one-stop website for all your modelling needs. Check out the store for special offers, pre-orders and also aftermarket accessories. Check out their website. A big thank you to Frontline Model Hobbies. Hello and welcome back. Yes, this is part 2 and we will be painting the cockpit and detail painting as well. Now, to begin with, once everything was free of as much dust and muck as I possibly can get rid of, last bit there with the old airbrush, was to paint the whole thing black with a Tamiya rubber black, I believe it was. And all this is to do is to make sure that everything is where it should, nothing's going to fly off, and if there are any really big sort of like outstanding glue marks, we can get rid. But also it does sort of like prove that there is sort of a really decent base for the lacquer paint to actually go on. Now, as you saw there, I am using I think it was light gold grey, which is pretty much the standard grey that was used with the cockpits of that era. So what I've done was I used the dark gold grey to begin with and went in with the light, just to put in patches, just to break up the monotony of the actual grey. But also you can use the black as your advantage by using it as a sort of like a pre-shading sort of like coat of paint. So once that was done, you can just go over it, light coats as per normal, just build up the paint gradually. You don't want it in big thick bulking sort of like blobs. And there you go, using the light grey or light gold grey just to lighten the panels and various parts of the cockpit up. So once that was all sorted and I was happy, I could go on with the first stages of brush painting. And again, I use the Vallejo or Vallejo, depending on where you are, for the actual smaller parts, as in for the seat cushions, the collective and the cyclic controls where it needs to be black or brown, and all those other little bits and pieces which you can do with a brush. Now, I particularly like this type of paint because you can put it on extremely thin and maneuver it about as basic as much as you want, and it dries really quick. But also it doesn't leave any brush marks as long as you thin it to, you know, to a degree that it's manageable for you to actually put it on the brush and onto the kit part itself. Now, I did use Iraqi sand for the seat cushions, and basically everything else, as in for the back, will be olive drab. Now again, you can lighten it with whites, greys, or even a yellow if you so wish, just to get that contrast between the darker sort of like contrasts of light shining through or basic wear and tear. So once the bulk of it was done, you can concentrate on the very smaller parts of detailing when we're looking at the ammunition boxes, the tarpaulin and the small little rucksack at the back. Now, for the little tarpaulin which I made out of Tamiya epoxy putty, I used a burnt umber for it, just to add a little bit of different sort of like colour to the rear, just to break up the grey and the olive drab. Now what I did do, especially with the rucksack, I did go over it with a lightened version of the olive drab. So once that was done and it was all dry, it was on to the dry brushing. Now I love this part because you can really make your painting which you've done thus far really pop out and really look like it's been used, or it's worn, or it's actually meant to actually be there. And that's a great thing. It gives you that sort of like feeling of progression, that you're actually getting somewhere for all your efforts. Now for this I just use a royal light grey, and on the brush I just simply put it on and take the vast majority off, which basically I'm left with extremely little on that brush, and then I can just lightly go over it. If you put too much on, then it's going to just splodge and just look a mess. So the less you got it on, the better it will be. Now with scale modelling, and you will admit to it because you've all done it, you always forget one bit. And don't lie, I know you do, because I do. There's always one bit, and that bit for me was the instrument panel. So I had to go and paint where I needed and then go back and dry brush. Yeah, you know you've done it, so don't lie. Anywho, once that was done, it was time to get a little bit dirty. Now for this I use my usual oil paint, which is the Aptalung, and for this I use sienna or burnt sienna for this, which is a slightly lighter brown than I usually use. Now it was thinned down with AK Interactive's low odour thinners, and simply just liberally just put on over the areas which I needed, as in the floor, the ammunition boxes, and pretty much everywhere over the cockpit area, just to give it a bit more of a lived-in look and sort of like try to emulate the dust that you would get from areas that you would land in to refuel, to rearm, if it wasn't a sort of like designated airfield. So that was my sort of like way of, well, my way of thinking, and hopefully it's paid off. Now with actually taking the oil paints off, it's really completely up to you of how much you leave or you take off. Now what I do get a sort of like cleanish brush, soak it in the thinners again, and just go around and just start dabbing the actual oil away. The good thing about it is you're not actually getting rid of all of it. It's actually staying in the brush. So if you think, hang on a minute, I think I've taken a bit too much off of that, you can just reapply it. Or if you really want to go to town and take a lot of it off, then again, let the brush soak it up. Use a kitchen towel to, well, unload your brush actually on the paper, and you can go back. But again, don't think you're governed by, oh, I've only got one trip at this, because you haven't. You can do it as many times as you want, and as long as you're happy with it, that is the main thing. So with everything dry, it was time just to stick these seat harnesses in, and they were pretty self-explanatory. It was a case of just bending them over, and basically super gluing them to the actual plates that I did put on top of the seats. And once they're in, you can just sort of like manipulate where you actually want them. I didn't want them too universal. I did want them to be slightly skew-if, as the pilot was just basically just got out. Maybe the crew chief would have gone in and just put them back to a certain degree, but I just wanted them to sort of like look like, you know, they have been used and not just completely just left, well, skew-if everywhere. But that was my reason behind it anyway. Now, with the actual instrument panel as well, it was a piece of photo etch with some film underneath it. Now, what I wanted to do was make sure that you could see some form of instrument dials. So I actually painted the actual area white first, so when you apply the actual film, it accentuates the actual dials themselves, so you can actually see them without too much trouble. But when that was over, I could go and sort of like pick up onto the weapons, as in the M16 and actually the M60, which is actually pictured here. So overall, once that was all done, I could start gluing the other part of the firewall together, and hopefully that was it. The cockpit was complete. Right then, once again, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for watching to the end, and hopefully you'll subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next video. Until then, bye bye.